Today our topic is going to be on brain development during middle school years, and I'm very happy to have Linda Mitchell here as our guest. Yeah, what is considered normal brain development during middle school years?
Pre-adolescent, middle school years, the brain is starting to change from a very black and white kind of thinking, very literal, to a very, well, not very, but more abstract, more gray areas. So they're not as apt to agree with everything that they hear. And it's their processing of information is more complex. They're forming new ideas, they're forming new opinions, and they will give voice to those opinions.
What type of behaviors are exhibited, during this middle school time period, with the student?
Well, because of the brain developing in the way it is, going from black and white to gray, and the student or the middle school age group is changing their thinking to new ideas, new opinions. They're going to give voice to those, and this usually catches the parents off guard because they will appear to be very argumentative, rebellious, challenging authority, and they're not. They're really just experimenting with their new thoughts and new ideas, and they need space and a listening ear to practice that.
So if I hear someone, a child during that age range complaining,
Well, invite them to continue to talk and to articulate what is their new idea and their thoughts, and step into their world. And remember that they're processing this information. It's not about us. They're not challenging us personally. It's their brain developing, growing, forming. And if we invite that and not see it as an argument or challenging our authority, rather see it as more of they're trying to debate issues so they can think on their own. And as parents, that's what we want.
when it comes to, the cognitive thought process, I get the feeling that this is a time when the cognitive thought process is beginning to line up.
It is.
Is that correct?
It is correct. It starts to line up, but again, every child's stage of development is not always even. So cognitively, they may either lag or be ahead of where they are physically. And this also will throw us off, because if physically they're not showing that they're developing, that doesn't mean they're intellectually and cognitively they're not. So development is uneven in all these different areas, because children don't just develop physically and cognitively or intellectually. There's also social development, emotional development, even a spiritual development that incorporates empathy and caring and a belief in something outside of themselves.
Yeah. What about the social aspect of it, though, during these middle school years?
Well, the social part is paramount. It's why kids go to school in the middle years, but it's also the same reason why some don't want to go to school, because of the social. It is so important to them of knowing where do they fit, where do they belong, and it's really their behavior socially is motivated more by fear of anything, fear of not fitting in, or fear of standing out or looking different. And their identity is about their peers right now. They're shifting their dependency from family to peers. And so now they're dependent, literally dependent on their peers to give them a sense of who they are and where they fit in the social circle. And conformity is the rule. It's very rigid. They don't think it is. They don't notice it so much, but I looked around the classroom once to a bunch of 7th graders and noticed every single student had a hoodie on. Not even a zip-up sweatshirt. They all had the pullover sweatshirt, and they were pretty much in uniform. And that's because they're so afraid of standing out and looking different. And they will do anything to just blend in. And it's not about becoming different. And parents will often say, well, take the risk and be different. It's not now. That's more like at 18. But the problem with that is they want to belong so much that they will do pretty much anything to fit. And that might be taking some pretty serious risks, thinking that that's what they need to do to fit in.
It kind of goes into this self-confidence and self-esteem issue.
But clearly, their self-esteem is vulnerable at that time. Emotionally, too, from hormones. The boys are developing and their testosterone levels increasing. It makes them more aggressive. So the girls, you start noticing a real change around 5th grade where it becomes like a pecking order, and it can be really viciously mean to their girlfriends. And it really is, sometimes it's hormonal, but it's not all about the hormones. But there's a lot of, especially for parents to notice this, that there's a lot of inconsistencies, unpredictable emotions. They can go off to school feeling great, and they'll come home in tears, and they can't necessarily articulate why. But it really is about the social piece, about their sense of self-worth. And the problem with that is that, and even for adults, we're not aware of how much we allow other people's opinions of us to affect us and give us a sense of who we are. And that's where the distorted thinking starts to take shape, is in those middle school years. Because they start thinking what they think others think they are, and they'll believe it. So their self-image can be distorted, their sense of self can be distorted, and they can start having irrational beliefs about who they are, and what they're capable of being.
How does someone break that cycle during those years?
For the middle schooler who's experienced rejection, or it feels like rejection, and as a parent, telling them not to worry about it, that's nothing to think about, is just dismissing it, because for them it feels real. And that's what they've experienced. And that's a psychological experience, not a logical experience. So if you start talking logic to a child who's experiencing something psychological, you're just not communicating. So to understand that it's real for them, I think if parents can ask and not tell, they do better. And by that I mean just asking questions, or reflecting back what the child just said, like reflecting back a feeling, like that can really hurt when people say that. And just asking a question like, is that person's opinion of you that important? And the child doesn't have to answer that to the parent, but it gives them an opportunity to think, not feel judged, and not feel defensive, not feel dismissed, but to really think about, it's just that one person's opinion, or that one person's comment. It's not everyone's.
And what tips can we give to parents?
The most important thing is to be aware of the fact that our pre-adolescents and young adolescent children are developing intellectually, physically, emotionally, socially, and that every day is stressful for them. And with change is stress. And that we need to recognize that going to school for some kids is exhausting. And they don't necessarily want to talk when they come home. They sometimes just need to pull in, go to their room, and recharge their battery. So I think the biggest thing for parents is to just understand that this stage of development is really tough for kids. They're on a very wobbly bridge between childhood and adulthood. We can't carry them over it. We could just provide maybe the guardrails as they get through. Being available and approachable. And there's a difference between those two. You can be available and be around, but you might not be approachable if you're constantly questioning your child, or you're giving them that nonverbal look, like that you don't understand, or that they're feeling judged.
You had mentioned, the child who has to go to their room to unwind from the day. And I know that isolation plays a big part in a child's growth. And that is not necessarily considered isolation in that case, but can it be isolation?
A child goes to their room for many reasons. School is extremely stressful. And if they're an introvert, it can be extremely exhausting, because just being around those many people is exhausting. And there's also a tendency for that age group to get depressed and anxious. And not all depressed kids are clinically depressed. They may be feeling low. And anxiety is what it's about socially. So they will go to their room because they are depressed or anxious, or to recharge. They will pull in and pull away from parents because that's their job. It's not hanging around the parents anymore. But that's where, if we're accessible and available to them, that when they do come out of their room, we are not preoccupied with correcting them, judging them, talking at them, rather that we're encouraging communication to be with them. The other piece that when you were asking about the parents really need to be not just aware of the development, but aware of where their child is, to be aware of who the friends are, to be really on top of things, one step ahead of them, knowing where they're at, who they're with, when they'll be home, who's supervising. I know for the kids, it's going to seem that their parents are interfering, that they're domineering, they're overprotective. But if the parents aren't involved, the child feels that the parent doesn't care. So there is a balance there, for sure.
Do you have any other tips that you'd like to share?
I think there's one area that parents tend to deny because we don't want to believe that middle school years that they're going to experiment with drugs, alcohol, tobacco, even inhalants. And those are the years that they are going to experiment because they are pulling away from family. And so they're going to challenge those norms. And they will take risks. And parents need to be aware that that is the most influential years. The average age for students who are going to try tobacco is 13. And the number of kids who start using alcohol is 14. And some of them, because of the stress, the anxiety, the feelings of depression, whether it's from hormones or environmental, they may start self-medicating. I mean, they're not going to use a substance thinking I'm going to medicate my condition, but they will experiment with tobacco or alcohol or marijuana and they'll actually feel a change and a shift. And people will think, well, I use it to calm myself. Well, they wouldn't need it because they have natural dopamine. But if they've been smoking, now they need it because their body's not producing it. And alcohol can be a medication for people. The only problem is once we use it, we feel good. But once we withdraw, we're back feeling worse than when we started, which means we need it even more. And then eventually we're going to need more and more, and you build up a tolerance. In those younger years, it only takes 6 weeks for some to get addicted.
How do you determine if this is just a phase in their life, or can you tell if it's an addiction at that age or that stage?
Well, we have to accept the fact that it is a phase, and it's normal for them to challenge authority, to think outside the box of social norms. Of course, that's what they're going to challenge more is family values, social norms, or any authority. So in that comes experimentation. And knowing that that is part of normal development, parents need to be on their feet and one step ahead and make sure that kids know what the rules are and the consequences and where the boundaries are. And this isn't just something that gets passed non-verbally. Parents need to sit down and have conversations with their children. They need to have the family rules be both the parents' and the child's rules. So when the child leaves the home and goes out to another person's house, those rules go with them. If the parents leave the house and go out at night, that the rules didn't go with the parents, that these are the family rules, our rules. And parents also would do well if they have privileges in place too, not just negative consequences when kids make mistakes, which they will, but positive consequences when they abide by the family rules and make good decisions, that those are in place as well.
Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thanks, Tara.